actually represents Gen Z?
We didn't destroy these institutions of state, but the fact is that they were destroyed. So somebody was involved.
There has been different vested interest groups who want to change the constitution right away.
Between the time that the Prime Minister resigned and the army took over, it was some 7 or 8 hours.
The Gen Z's problem is they feel most of the political party leaders are very corrupt and they don't want them.
Of salience right now is what is the political system that is going to emerge in Nepal.
Nepal's fiery moment of reckoning is a new Nepal rising from the ashes. It took just 36 hours of unprecedented violence by angry mobs of Nepal's young people to bring down the government in Kathmandu. A government led by a corrupt, aging elite, a government that at its best a revolving door of political stalwarts who held high office these last 15 years. Political stalwarts who once enjoyed a reputation for being connected to the people, but now, literally, they've all met a fiery end. Gunfire, sirens, explosions, smoke. Hello everyone, I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express, the show that focuses on the whys and the wherefores behind events that impact India and its neighborhood. Today, while India may have one eye on US President Donald Trump blowing hot and cold on tariffs, and the other on Israel's widening the war on Gaza to attack the Hamas leadership in the Qatari capital Doha, it's our immediate neighbor Nepal that has our undivided attention. Where the shutdown of over 20 social media apps after a video showing how the Nepo babies lived privileged lives was shut down. But the violence that followed, the crackdown on young people, many of them wearing school uniforms, and the rage and the grief that followed was simply shocking. The death toll rose overnight to 30, over 1,000 people are said to have been injured. The Prime Minister of Nepal has gone into hiding. Has he fled the country? Where are the other leaders of the CPN, the Nepal Communist Party, Prachand, the so-called crony capitalist club? The Nepal army has taken control of Kathmandu. A former Chief Justice, Sushila Karki, has been picked by the protesters, the Gen Z, to head the new interim government, possibly. And the mayor of Kathmandu, Balin Shah, is their pick for Prime Minister. Now, General C activists are reportedly clearing the streets so that life can return to normal. What can we expect in the coming days? Talking to us today are a battery of experts. Former Indian ambassador to Nepal, Ranjan Rae, is author of the definite book on India-Nepal relations, Kathmandu Dilemma, Resetting India-Nepal Ties. He was in Kathmandu at the height of the monarchy's toughest test. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Also on the show is a very, very big welcome to Namrata Sharma, a hard-nosed veteran journalist with over 30 years of experience covering Nepal's politics with a completely unbiased view. She headed the Center for Investigative Journalism in Nepal as its president and writes and speaks regularly on developments in her country in various publications. I would like to ask the first question, put the first question to you, Ambassador. Please tell us when and how when and how all this happened. Did it come as a huge shock to India? Because nobody in India saw it coming.
I think the discontent, the sense of alienation, the anger at the corruption of the political class, this has been going on for some time. And I remember, many months ago when I was in Nepal, a frequent question asked to me by friends and also journalists was, can a Bangladesh type situation emerge in Nepal?
But why would they ask that some months ago? Was there something happening there, or did you hear something that set off that kind of a conversation?
No, it was because of the corruption of the leaders, and as you said, this revolving musical chair policy and rotating the position of the Prime Minister amongst different leaders, and the lack of good governance, and corruption, of course, is a very, very major issue. So even then, people felt that, the government is out of touch with the street, the opinion on the street, and especially the younger generation. And I think the trigger for this was, of course, the banning of the social media apps. But the magnitude of the protest and the manner in which it evolved over those 2 days, especially after the killing of these young people, I think that ferocity that was unleashed was unimaginable. And, virtually every institution of state, of a democratic state, has been destroyed, has been burned to the ground. And so there is a sense, and Gen Z has denied involvement in this kind of arson. So, there is a feeling that perhaps other people may have infiltrated into the movement. So, yes, the sense of alienation was palpable, but the magnitude of the protest and the manner in which it evolved, certainly nobody could have anticipated.
Namrata, if I could bring you in, please tell us what was really speaking, was it really the social media ban that was the spark? Because, this ban on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and WhatsApp, and X, and all that could not have been the only reason. And as the ambassador said, there's been an underlying anger that's been building up for years. Didn't happen just yesterday. Young Nepalis have been feeling that these politicians have betrayed them, that the leaders that they trusted, have become corrupt, dynastic, even living lives of luxury. And apparently, there was a video that went around of these nepo kids, flaunting their luxury lifestyle that went online and became your rallying cry, the Gen Z's rallying cry. But what is curious? What is curious to me is once the social media was shut down, how did everyone communicate with each other? How did they coordinate these street protests?
Thank you, Neena, for first of all having me here. Um, actually, this is one thing the Gen Z has been continuously saying, that the international media has been covering in a way that the Gen Z revolution, the protests just now, is because of the ban of the social media, which is not true.
Ah.
Like you rightly said, there has been dissatisfaction among the youth of Nepal for quite some time now. And Ambassador Ray will probably agree with me for saying that right from the days of the monarchy in Nepal, movements have been led by the youth. You see, in the panchayat time also, it was the youth who used to come out on the street. And that time, when there was absolute monarchy, no freedom of speech and expression or press, people were out in the street and they were youth. Youth were leading the movement. The same thing happened after the restoration of democracy in 1990, when a series of people's movement continued because they were not satisfied by the way things were happening. The first, after the interim government headed by Kishanji, when Nepali Congress got the absolute majority, they were not able to perform, and they were outseated. Then a series of coalition government happened, which you all know
Yeah.
of. I won't go into details. But every time when there was dissatisfaction, youth were out in the street. What has been demonstrated now is it's not just the youth in the 30s and 40s
These are 20-year-olds.
Of Nepal who protest when they feel corruption is rampant. Zenji showed that youth below 28 are also ready to march. You see, even in the panchayat days that was there, but in our time our generations were not labeled with alphabets, you see. But now what Genji has showed, that they are the digital age kids, and they have been posting, like you rightly said, the Nepo baby videos. And apart from that, also, media in Nepal, unlike many of the other South Asian countries, have been unraveling a series of corruption cases. I'm
Is
sure.
this in print?
Yes, yes, all
Or
over. Like there was a huge, massive human trafficking issue related to the Bhutanese refugees, where the home minister and all the ministers were involved. Names are flashed out. There are massive financial crisis cases, and all the politicians who have been ousted now, majority of them have been involved in such cases. You see, and this has
that
led to a deep unsatisfaction among the general people of Nepal, and particularly the youth. You see, and what Zenji had been doing, they are the kids who are always on social media, you see, and they have been making TikToks, they have been putting posts on Facebook and voicing discontent against corruption.
Yes,
And
but it's
then
interesting.
when the Ayashi of the rich famous really in flaunting wealth and all that happened, they made videos and made that viral.
Hmm.
But they were already saying that we are going to start protesting against corruption, and they were already doing it in social media. So when the social media ban was inflicted, I think it was a very um, stupid and unstrategic way the government did it at a time when they were already protesting against corruption, and they was putting on the social media that they were against corruption. Then the ban of social media came, and this
So
digital age children are actually uh, social media is their lifestyle. It's a oxygen for them. So that was just a trigger that happened, but that was definitely
yeah.
not the main thing.
But Namrata, this is why I was asking, how did they manage to communicate with each other and manage to come onto the street? Was it a house to house, door to door kind of, mobilization?
Yeah, there was no mobilization. It was not a organized protest at all in that sense, like party politics or civil society organized movement. No, it was not like that. Especially after the COVID days, they've been very active out in the street with agendas of the people.
These are young people. These are young people who were already had organizations where they would air their grievances. What was it all about?
Most of them are students. Quite a few of them do work also. They are professionals also. Some of them were organized into civil society groups like anti-climate climate change protest. Like when the Nijgat airport was being built, Tanuja and her group, there's a group called Harit Nepal. So
Uh-huh.
they were active in that sense, and very active young students also, that kind of movement. Then they were in touch with each other through through the social media. How I observed their this movement of coming out on the 8th was because they were posting things against against corruption, against flamboyancy, and then also the fact that they were calling each other, asking people to come on the street, not
Okay.
necessarily people who knew each other, you see.
Oh, I
So
see.
and when the social media ban was imposed, so I started agitating them, because as I said, this age, this digital age kids, social media is kind of an oxygen, a lifeline for them, but what people were also doing is they were connecting through VPNs, you see. So they were
Ah, yes.
totally not out as such. They were taking the risk, and they were connecting with each other. Maybe not everybody, but people knew that on the 8th they were going to march towards the parliament. And because the social media uh, uh, was blocked by the government, more people came than was expected. I think that's what happened.
But Ambassador, there's also a very strong sense that we get when we were watching all of this as it was happening, that the protests were being hijacked by the next day, on September 9th, that it was being hijacked by external elements, because the parliament building was set on fire. We did see young people, throwing stuff into the parliament building, but the attacks also became very personal. There were mobs that went into the prime minister's home. They torched the homes of a whole load of other previous prime ministers, beat up ministers too, and nearly killed one of the minister's wives. Apparently, she survived. So, would you say that there was a kind of the mob, another mob did take over, but Gen Z, I think, did sort of retrieve the situation the next day by when the Nepal's army and they came to some kind of an agreement?
So let me say, these protests were handled very poorly by the government. The prime minister delayed resigning even after these youngsters had been killed in police firing, and many of them were shot in the chest, on the head. And I think it's because of these developments on the 8th that on the 9th there was this fury that was unleashed. But on what has happened on the 9th is that all the institutions of a democratic state, the parliament, the Supreme Court, the presidential palace, the seat of the government were burnt to the ground. And these are huge buildings. The Hilton Hotel was burnt to the ground. These are huge buildings. It's not even easy. Some student can't go and light a fire and burn the whole building to the ground.
So, are you saying that it was planned by another group that infiltrated the student group?
I'm raising this question, and the students are saying so themselves. They said, look, we didn't destroy these institutions of state, but the fact is that they were destroyed. So somebody was involved, somebody joined these protests by the students and took advantage of the situation. So it's a very serious matter. And I think the right question to ask is who benefits from this?
Yes, who
And
does?
and you also mentioned the fact that leaders were lynched and the homes of many of the leaders were set on fire. It's also interesting to examine which political parties were not affected, by this rampaging and arson that happened, particularly on the 9th. So, I don't want to, I'm just raising these questions. The other question people have in mind, you see, between the time that the Prime Minister resigned and the army took over, it was some 7 or 8 hours.
That's
And a
right.
lot of destruction took place during this time. So the question then in people's mind is, why was the army so late in responding? And I think these are legitimate questions that people are asking. That was there more to this than just the protests of the students? And especially since the Gen Z students have said that they were not involved
In the arson.
in destroying the institutions of the state.
Is absolutely correct, and the Gen Z students have come out openly and actually are imploring that please stop this. This was not our agenda. Our agenda is to get corruption out of the country, and we will do it. But this is not the way. One thing what I want to share is right on the second day when vandalism started, even on 8th September, the first day, after the shooting started, there was a kind of a rush, and there were people. I was talking with a couple of Zenjis and other students also who had gone out in the protest, and they were saying that suddenly from nowhere, people who definitely were not Zenjis started coming, and they looked like they had their own agenda, agenda of creating chaos in the street, even on the 8th. So on the 9th, when the Gen Z said that 19 of us have been killed, and they are shot, like the ambassador correctly said,
In
targeted
their
on the
head.
forehead and the chest, and the whole country got stunned, like we couldn't sleep the whole night. And these children started saying, we will defy the curfew. And the Gen Z got out in the street, but unfortunately, what happened is there were other interest groups. And definitely, people suspected, the Genjis suspected, and others too, that it's the right winged uh, people with right winged values and political affiliations also.
So, is this the Rashtriya Swatantra Party?
No, Rashtriya Swatantra Party is Rashtriya Prajatantra Party is one
Yeah,
of the right wing parties, but now there are
Prajatantra.
individuals like Durga Prasai, there are others also, others with that mindset also. The other we can't pinpoint exactly whom because they haven't been no fact checking has happened yet.
That's right.
The other thing I want to share with you is, you know, um, Gen Zs are youth below 28, right? And majority of the Nepali political parties, like in India, have cadres, have members who are below that age, between the adult age, not minors, but adults. So there's also a suspect. People are also feeling that in the name of Gen Zs from different other political parties also could have joined.
I
People have
see.
been dissatisfied to the core. Corruption has escalated between 1990 and now in such a way that people had not anticipated.
So you're saying that people cutting across party lines, young people cutting across party line, have joined in.
Dissatisfied people within the political parties also who are dissatisfied with their own leadership also. So there is no ruling out that these people could have come to vest out their own anger also. But on the other hand, the vandalism that happened, is definitely more organized. To tell you the truth, my observation when I've been observing the Gen Z on social media before the protest and even after. What I feel is there were others also observing them, right? So
Uh-huh.
when others could have taken advantage of the fact that, okay, these kids are going to come, they are not fully organized, but we can organize to put our agenda forward, and that could have happened both from inside the country and outside the country, people who want to push them. So that is something that cannot be ruled out.
That's very interesting, Namrata, that you should say that because this. There's also something which struck me when they were talking to the army. When the Gen Z guys were talking to the army yesterday, they had a very comprehensive list of demands. Ambassador, did you notice that? I mean, they wanted the dissolution of the parliament. They wanted the setting up an interim government. They wanted a new constitution crafted. They said they want to make Nepal a Hindu nation. So Gen Z seem to be working to a plan. It's not as random as we thought it was. It seems to be very comprehensive, and there seems to have been. I mean, maybe I don't know, but I don't know enough to comment on it. But to me, it feels as if they've been. This has been in the works for some time. I mean, even saying that the prime minister should only have a 2-year term limit. You know.
Let me respond to that. There are diverse opinions within the Gen Z group. It's not as if it's one consolidated view that Gen Z has, and they're trying to thrash out all the issues and the ideas that they have to arrive at some, unanimous or at least consensus-based approach in terms of the way forward. Now, here I just want to explain the context to you. The discontent in Nepal was with the political leadership of Nepal.
Uh-huh.
If you conflate that with the constitution of Nepal that was adopted in 2015, then you go in one direction, which means you're questioning the very constitution. If the problem is with the leaders and you say the leaders ought to go, and then you continue to work within the constitution, that's the other direction. So there are these 2 points of view. And the 2015 constitution, if you look at the Nepalese history, is the outcome of 70 years of struggles for political emancipation from the Rana autarky, from the partyless panchayat and executive monarchy, and a desire for a more inclusive system, which was which was part of the demands of the Maoist insurgency and the Madhesi agitations. So Nepal has seen a lot of struggle, first for political emancipation, which was basically multi-party democracy, and then for a more inclusive state, which means better representation of the diversity of Nepal in the institutions of the state and in the economic resources available. And the 2015 constitution is drafted by the people of Nepal, by an elected constituent assembly. And that is the outcome of these 7 decades. So, it's not so easy to say we will change the constitution. We will do this or that, because the constitution is a very sensitive document negotiated between diverse interest groups and in the aftermath of very violent movements and insurgencies where tens of thousands of people have been killed. So it's a very complex issue. So today, if somebody says we have to change the constitution, that's a valid, point of view. But you have to then work out some sort of a consensus within the system to change the constitution. So these are very complex. It's a very sensitive time right now. For instance, the only civilian authority today in the country is the president of Nepal and the parliament, which has not been dissolved. Now, the demand of some people, including the mayor of Nepal, is to dissolve the parliament and only then form an interim government. If you dissolve the parliament, then who does the interim government, who is it accountable to? There is no accountability. Now, this has happened in the past. In 2012, when they had a big crisis and the elections to the Constituent Assembly, were to be held, they had a similar situation. The parliament had been dissolved, so they created an interim government under the then Chief Justice of Nepal, Mr. Khilraj Regmi. But that decision was on the basis of an all party consensus. All the political parties agreed that this is the way out. Do you have that situation today? So these are very complex issues. And I think, people in Nepal have to tread very carefully. Ultimately, it's the people of Nepal who will decide the way forward. But I
That's
think
right.
the implications of whatever path they choose obviously need to be thrashed out.
That's a good point, sir. No, I also wanted to ask you, Namrata, there have been talks between the army and Gen Z. But who actually represents Gen Z? Is there a face? Is it a collective of faceless young people who don't want to be in the public eye? Are they afraid of reprisals? What is it that, what that, because we don't have one person. And as the ambassador said, the last time they brought in another former chief justice, they're going to do the same thing again to head an interim government, maybe Miss Sushila Karki. But wasn't she removed on charges of bias? I mean, there is a question mark over her as well. No.
Actually, after the 8th, some of these Gen Zs who are leading uh, the call for a protest over social media actually switched off their mobile and stayed back because they were being hunted by the government. But then on the second day, when the government was thrown out, they've come out openly. The army chief invited them for a dialogue midnight of ninth, midnight at midnight. And they went. There were 12 of them. They went. And that time they were a little bit upset because the army chief actually requested them to start having dialogues with people like Durga Prasad, the pro monarchy person, and also some representatives from the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, which came up as an independent group of people who then later on formed the party in the last election. So they refused that. And then again, next day, on the 10th, the army again called uh, some of the same ones who went and some who didn't. Because in the midnight meeting, some of them openly opposed that we are not going to meet these people, and we have our own agenda, we are going to stick to it. So those who opposed were not called on the second meeting. But in the second meeting, again, what happened? No, second meeting, actually, Durga Prasad was in the vicinity and the army chief wanted them to meet. So they didn't meet. So what has been happening now is there has been different vested interest groups who want to change the constitution right away and through the election, like have a presidential rule in place, get rid of the proportional representation that Nepal's constitution has. Nepal's constitution, as the ambassador earlier said, is an outcome of a whole process of institutionalizing and reinstating democracy in this country. So what Zenji has said is, we are as actually I really like this. There was a press conference called today, and there was some Genji over there talking openly, and they said, as long as we have a constitution, that means we have a country, and we respect our the respect that we show our constitution is the respect to the country. So we want the same constitution, but because it is an unprecedented state Nepal is in now, we want somebody like Sushila Karki, who has an untarnished reputation as far as corruption is concerned. She's always fought corruption. She's very vocal. She's very harsh, though, and many people don't like her. But, to tell you the truth, people like Balin Shah and all, who were one of the young leaders, the names that were coming, he has come out openly and said that I respect the choice of the Gen Z.
No, it's very interesting that this mayor of Kathmandu, he's a rapper. Apparently, he is from Bangalore. He studied in a college in Bangalore here,
He's a
and he's
structural engineer, civil engineer who did excellent work during the earthquake time. And after that, he wanted to be a rapper and he did an excellent job as a rapper. Then he said, after 5 years, I'm going to come and contest as mayor of Kathmandu. And he did homework during the 5 years, and he came and he had a sweeping victory, but he has his own history.
Yeah, so basically, all these other people whose names are being floated is not coming from the Gen Z side. It's just speculation, which is, I
From Gen Z
suppose,
side, there
being.
was another name that had come. It's Sudan Guru, who is part of the Gen Z movement, but he actually withdrew. And today in the press conference, what he openly said, and in a very nice way, was, "What do I know of running a government? I know how to mobilize people and bring people out in the street, but what do I know about running a government?" So if somebody like Sushila Karki can come, we want somebody with no corruption background, and she has been an anti-corruption crusade always. She's very blunt. That's the reason why she doesn't have many friends. And what is happening, what I'm hearing just now, is she's not the first choice with the army of the president.
I
The
see.
other thing I wanted to say just now, Nina, I think it's important, is since 8 and now, the Nepali people have not seen our president. So the other
Oh,
thing Zenji is saying is, why are we only dialoguing with the army chief? It's fine. He's been very nice. He's been trying to facilitate. He's taking the role of a guardian. That is okay. But as long as we have the president in seat, he is the head of the country. Although ceremonial, at the moment he has the mandate to make sure an interim government is put in place, right? And we want to meet our president. So
has
that
that
has
happened?
that
That hasn't
hasn't happened.
happened.
And
Even though they've been trying
we
very
got a
hard.
statement from the president today asking people to be calm, and that he is moving ahead and putting a interim government as per the constitution. That message has come. And I think he has also passed on the message, l- try to find your leader from among the elected bodies, you see.
I see.
But the Gen Z's problem is they feel most of the political party leaders are very corrupt and they don't want them.
But is there also a sense of vendetta politics in the sense that they are being targeted and there are demands for the punishment for those who ordered the security forces to shoot at the protesters? And similarly, there are demands for investigation into the wealth accumulated by these senior leaders. Does that seem like the right move? I mean, Ambassador, is this exactly what happens every time there's a sort of a revolution or governments change, people are targeted, you know?
These issues will come in due course. But the situation right now is different. The situation right now is how to move ahead politically.
Correct.
Now, if you elect a person from one of the existing political parties and the parliament is convened, then you can have your business as usual. But the constitution of Nepal does not allow a non-member of the lower house of parliament to be appointed prime minister. So, and also, if you have a non-political interim government and you have a parliament at the same time, which comprises different political parties, how is this interim government to function? Will it secure the support of the parliament? Because it has no connection with the political parties that are represented in parliament. So these are very, very complex issues. How to go forward? Secondly, as I was saying, the only civilian authority is the president. And obviously, he has authorized the army chief to enter into these negotiations. And according to the statement that he released today, he has said he is in touch with various groups to find some way out of the present political impasse. What I find a bit unusual is the fact that the head of state has not addressed the nation at such a critical time and juncture in the history of that country. He has not been visible. All we have are these two press statements that have been issued by the president, signed by the president. But he has not addressed the nation. And neither has he met, the Gen Z representatives or even the name that is going around of the former chief justice. So it's so this sort of thing leads to speculations. And, Kathmandu, I've lived there for many years, is really the sort of rumor capital of the world. So I think there needs to be a lot more transparency in the manner in which the issues are being progressed. As Namrata was saying, meeting Gen Z in the middle of the night, it all leads to a lot of speculation of backroom deals and vested interests and stuff like that. So I just want to stress this issue.
Ambassador, if I could ask you one more question, the map that this Belen has put up in his office shows a greater Nepal, from the Satluj to the Teesta, and it's supposed to be in response to India's map, which shows an Akhand Bharat from Pakistan all the way to Bangladesh. Should India be worried about these things?
The boundary issue is obviously something between the two governments. And, our relationship is so close and so intertwined that in any such relationship, there are bound to be issues. And the boundary dispute is one such issue. And it has flared up recently, when there was an agreement between India and China to revive border trade and the Yatra
through Lipu Lake.
Through Lipu Lake, which Nepal claims. So these are issues, and in due course, obviously, they have to be resolved. But these are not the issues that are of salience right now. Of salience right now is what is the political system that is going to emerge in Nepal. On the question of the monarchy, a couple of months ago, there was a huge rally.
Right.
There was a big rally organized by the pro-monarchy elements, led by this Mr. Durga Parsai. And, there were a fair amount of youngsters also over there. And this also resulted in some violence. And Mr. Durga Parsai ran away. I believe he crossed the border into India. Later, he was arrested and incarcerated. So, there are obviously pro-monarchical elements that are trying to do this. So, it's one had thought that all these issues of monarchy versus republicanism, Hindu versus secular, federal versus unitary system, that these issues had been resolved in the 2015 constitution. But elements that have lost out in this process are reasserting themselves because they sense that there is a huge disenchantment amongst the people with existing political processes and leaders that have emerged out of the new constitution. And so they want to ride on the back of this disenchantment and say that, this is time for revival, say, of the monarchy. It's only the monarchy that can keep the country together, can, provide good governance, national pride, and so on. So there are these diverse elements that are again emerging.
So you're basically saying, sir, that India is not a factor really in this whole revolution. It's not a player. It's not the instigator. It's just we're just going to have to watch.
Well, India is a huge factor in Nepal, but I don't think India is a factor in the immediate issues that are bedeviling Nepal right now. But, given the nature of the relationship between the two countries, obviously India has to very carefully monitor what's happening.
The fact is that China has played a very long game with these South Asian countries. Nepal has been on the top of the list. Prime Minister Oli was one of the 30 or so leaders who was invited to Tianjin, to Tiananmen Square, the parade. He was also set to visit India in the coming week before he headed to the United Nations General Assembly meeting. So there is talk of a China hand, which I can't believe because, it seems a bit of a stretch because given the backing that Oli gets from Beijing, and very anti-India tirade that he has let loose on India. So, but Lipu Lake was a sort of a gesture by the Chinese towards India. But could you tell us whether what India should do at this current moment? Because should we reach out to the Nepalese, to the generals, given the fact that both our armies do have a good rapport?
Couple of things. First of all, this is a homegrown movement by the people of Nepal. They have the agency in terms of how they want to lead their country forward. As far as India is concerned, we would like to see peace and stability in Nepal. We have open borders, very close relationships. A disturbed, unstable Nepal is not good for India. So that is our fundamental interest. Thirdly, historically, India has always supported the aspirations of the people of Nepal, always. And I think this time too, India will support the aspirations of the people of Nepal. And I'm sure India is engaged with all political forces across the border Nepal and would like to see a stable, peaceful, and a process that is owned and run by the Nepalese people.
Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador. Thanks for coming on the show. Thank you very much.
I'll take your leave. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you. This shocking violence that that came across in all these cities, will it be hijacked again by these elements that created the violence? Isn't that also a danger?
Actually, that scares me, because last night the first night on it, and I couldn't sleep because of the deaths. Last night, I couldn't sleep because of this vandalism that I was seeing. It is heinous, it is like these people are not at all behaving like human beings. One thing, the other thing that I also wanted to mention here is Nepal has a huge problem of drugs and alcoholism, you know, and unfortunately, the government has not addressed that at all. You see, together with the frustration of unemployment, lack of education, proper systems for youth, there's also a huge problem of drugs and alcoholism. What I saw on the streets the last 2 days is so scary. I'm scary for my mother, who's a single woman who's sitting down the street. I'm worried for every Nepali citizen. And there's no saying that this can be controlled soon because the police are not doing effective work that Nepal police had started doing. Nepal army was also a very effective body, but now they have too many things in place.
But you also have these political guys like Rabi Lamichane, who's been released from jail.
Actually, they were not released as such. They were taken out of
Sorry.
jail.
Yes, yes.
And now
No.
a lot of prisons, lots of prisoners are out. So that has happened all over. And to tell you the truth, just sharing with you, Delhi Bazaar is where my family home is. And there's this prison there, the government prison. And the prisoners got out, and some of my in-laws were telling me, there were prisoners sitting around their walls, and they didn't know what
My
to do.
God.
You see,
That is
and
extremely
in
scary.
Bhaktapur last night it was reported that there were a few rapists were seen walking around in the streets. So the situation is going more and more out of control. You see, so I think the president and the army has to really put their stock together and form the interim government.
Namrata, do you want to make concluding remarks? Because I just also came across a report which said that Nepal has suffered because there's been no job creation, no investment, and the majority of people in Nepal survive on remittances. That's 82% of its workforce is actually doesn't. The majority of them are 30-year-olds, don't have proper employment. That means a third of the population has no jobs. So shouldn't that be the focus of the incoming interim administration rather than rejigging the constitution and sort of getting even with the leaders who've been leading, basically skimming the profits of government?
Absolutely. What I want to say here is if you look at the GDP growth of Nepal, World Bank, you will see that there has been rise of that, you see. And why has that happened is because of the remittance that the Nepali people have gone out to do labor work in. The remittance that they send, the migrant workers of
That's
Nepal,
right. That's
has
right.
actually pushed the economy of this country. You see, they send money, it's invested in the family, in the country, and in their different aspects of their life. So that has helped a lot. Unfortunately, what the government has been doing in the last few decades of restoration of democracy in this country is filling up their own pockets and making
Hmm.
sure that they ensure their seats in the next election. You see, that's
Hmm.
what they've been doing. They have not done a proper planning of how the money that comes from the remittance of the people gets spent in the country. People are doing it in their own way, but if government gave incentives, made areas, like opened opportunities where the youth could be involved in their country themselves. There are lots of excellent example of migrant workers returning back in Nepal, opening, farms, where they put in the skills they have developed working in European countries and other places, and they are earning a good sum of money. This could be example for the youth, and they could actually start their own thing. So one of the key elements of the Gen Z movement was exactly this. They were saying we don't want to leave our country. Why should
I
we leave
see.
our country if we don't want to? We want a good education system right here in this country. We want also employment and livelihood opportunities here so that we can prosper in the country and not leave the country. But this is what I think, this is their main concern. They want to study in Nepal, they want to work in Nepal, they want a conducive atmosphere made for them so that they can prosper. Unfortunately, Nepal government has not focused on that.
Yeah, thank you, Namrata. It must be said, however, that if Nepal slips back into the hands of another set of faces who follow the same path, it will actually be a turn for the worse. For India, of course, it's critical that we cannot have another unstable neighbor on our border. And well, have we reached out as we did in the Maldives and Sri Lanka is another question. Has the anger on the streets dissipated? Could it erupt again if things don't go exactly the way that Gen Z wants? I mean, did Bangladesh is a good example of how things deteriorated. But let's hope for the best. And viewers, do click on the New Indian Express and the Global Express icon and share.